Hey everybody, welcome back to Battle Ready Inc. So the Kickstarter for Wildhearts is just about to end for their Foundations set. Now I want to take this time because soon people will start getting physical cards in their hand. They can start doing all kinds of deck building. So I wanted to go ahead and break down how I approach deck building in this game. As we know, you can only have 2 copies of a single card in your deck. So and it's a 30 card deck, so you've got some wiggle room here of how to go about building your deck, as well as which sort of ratios should you be running for cost of cards, right? A lot can go into this, and it's not quite so cut and dry like you might think. Let's get into this. And like I said, the late pledges are still open until February 13th, so just like 2 more days at the time of this going up. So if you want to get in there, make sure you do. Also, there are, I believe, the Wildhearts team said that there are still a few people that haven't gone in and confirmed their pledges yet. So if you haven't been to the page in a while and actually gone and confirmed like your payments and stuff like that have gone through, make sure you do that. Because every little bit helps, and these guys really appreciate all your support. So make sure you go in and actually confirm that your order went through. All right, so I'm here in the Tabletopia mod. You can get access to this. You just join the Discord. They have links to this. It's completely free. You just got to make a Tabletopia account, which is also free. And then you can come in here and play this as much as you want. This is every card that will be in the Foundation set. So if you're curious about what cards are going to be available, it's going to be all of these cards right here, as well as, of course, the starter decks also, which you can play. They are pre-built and pre-set up for you here in the mod already. But we're going to be just using these cards here because this is a mix of both the Set 1 Foundations cards and the starter deck cards. So we're going to just use this layout here as our pool of cards here for our deck building demo that we're going to go ahead and do for you guys. All right, so when determining your deck, of course, you have to pick your 2 familiars. As always, you have to pick 2 familiars, and these are going to represent your deck, right? And based on the style that you pick of those familiars, those are the cards that you're going to be able to pull from for your deck building process. Now, if you guys know me well enough by now, you should know that my go-to is pretty much always Might and Ferocity, which is actually a little bit lower of a combo pick together. Usually people like to grab one, either Might or Ferocity, and then pick either Tactics or Special as their 2 styles, right? Because Special and Tactics can be somewhat seen as a little bit more support style type of style, and then the other 2 are more of your just like big guns, raw power type of creatures, right? Just across the board. They'll have a little bit higher power and things like that, or boosting power abilities, things like that. So I just like to go just double whammy, let's go Might and Ferocity here. So I'm just gonna pull out the Chrism here. I like the Chrism a lot. It's a pretty simple card. It's not too crazy here, but it's got a whopping 8 power, and it comes in play with block, so you don't have to worry about your opponent immediately messing it up with some sort of detrimental effect. So I'm a big fan of the Chrism. And then when it comes to Ferocity, I think it depends on what your building goal is, right? Of your how you want to approach it, just based off of these 2. Now remember, we'll also get there's mystery familiars that have not been revealed yet for Foundations, right? So all the early pledgers and stuff, they all got access to these mystery familiars, which will be added to the mod when Foundations officially gets here. So they're still keeping them under wraps and letting people open them and be surprised, and then afterwards they'll go ahead and add them to the mod so we can play with them as well. So we're going to have 1 more of each style. We're going to get another familiar. So for the purposes of this, though, I'm just going to stick with the Infernander, a nice classic. Our little dragon boy here. So he's just the debut effect on him alone is pretty solid every time you debut of him. As long as you're winning the field, you get +1 power. So like right from the start of the game, he's basically a 5 power, same as the Skyson is, which is a printed 5. Now when scoring, if you have 3 or less cards in hand, he has +3 power, so he could become an 8 like the Chrism, but it's a little bit more tricky to get that all the time. I know I struggle often when it comes to trying to get that Skyson ability to trigger. However, the debut can also be really nifty. Move Skyson and a friendly ally to an adjacent field. So you can get like creatures into otherwise hard to get areas. Just for like an example here, we have the Griffin's Crag. The 2 cost or lower ally cards cannot be played to this field. So like 2 cost, 1 and 2 cost, I mean, that's like your bread and butter of your deck, which we're going to get into. So getting those cards in this field is really difficult unless you're running something like the Skyson, and then you play them to an adjacent field, and then the Skyson moves them into the Crag, which can be a pretty solid strategy as well. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to keep it simple and go with the Infernander. Now, when we're approaching our resource curve, right? Some games you call it like a mana curve, things like that. For our resource curve here, we start turn 1 with 1 freebie resource, and then you're going to resource 1 card from your hand. So you're going to have 2 resources on turn 1 minimum, right? Depending on what style you're playing. If you're playing something like special, they have ways to they have a lot of ramp, so they can get way more resources way faster than the other styles can. But for our purposes here, we're just going to be kind of looking at the basic state of every turn we're going to add 1 more. So by turn 4, we should have 5 resources, right? That's only 5 resources. Isn't a ton, but by turn 2, we're going to at least have 3. So keep that in mind. So you don't want to go too heavy on your 3 cost cards. For a 30 card deck, I like to do 6 3 cost or higher, because there is cards that are higher than 3. Like for example, the Psymonk here is a 4 cost. I think they've stated that it could potentially go even higher than that, which is really crazy, because like I said, in a standard game, you're only like on turn 4, you're only going to have 5 resources. So just kind of keep that in mind. You got to really be careful on those high cost cards. You don't want too many, because even with me running 6, I'll probably only ever get to play like 2 or 3 3-cost cards, maybe. I've gone through plenty of games where I've only ever used a single 3-cost card, so don't go too heavy on those. But you do want to pick the stuff that's going to be really impactful depending on how you go about building your deck. Now, for what I'm going to do here, you can do all kinds of different things here. I could just pick 1 of each of the 3 different ones, and that could be okay. For example, here we have the Croc, a printed 7 power here, and then debut. All players shuffle their hands into their deck and redraw that many cards. Like, can really mess up opponents potentially here. We got the Rapture, which can completely wipe out a field, all wild creatures, right? So that could be super, super strong. And then he's going to gain +1 power for all when a creature is KO'd in this field. So not even with his own debut effect, but like in, later plays, if you continue to, KO creatures in his field, he will continue to gain that block and that power up. So he can really, really get out of control potentially. We got Judge's Decree, which I'm a huge fan of this card. I love Judge's Decree. I know there's a lot of people, it's super polarizing with this card. People love it or they hate it. I'm in the love it fan club here. Basically, I just shotgun this out. If I'm going first on a turn, just bam, Judge's Decree. All my creatures in the perfect position on the field. If I play Judge's Decree, I win all the fields that are active. That's a really good time to play Judge's Decree, in my opinion. So that can be a really powerful card. For our might cards up here, we have the Tadalo, which is a printed 6, but he has an ongoing of when scoring has a +1 power for each ongoing effect you have in play. Counting himself, he's basically comes out the gate as a 7, same as the Croc does. and then potentially even more. So we'll also keep in mind that both of our familiars have ongoing effects here. So he's going to be the Tadalo right out the gate in this deck would be an 8 power. So that feels like a really good, like he's already on par, or sorry, 9 power. Sorry, math is so hard. Let me tell you, basic math here. 6 plus 3 is 9. So he comes into play as a 9 power creature here, so strong. So yeah, that's great. We have the Volt Rock here, which choose up to 4 friendly creatures, and then each different creature you can apply one of these different effects here. So that can really juice up your creatures as well, which is a big thing that we see in Might a whole lot. Is like they just like plus power, plus power, plus power in all these different ways. We have Unity Tactics. So if we decide to build a deck that has a lot of like low cost creatures, Unity Tactics can be really good as well, because then we can give our whole board all of our allies plus 2 power and block. And then if we have 6 or more creatures with block, gain 2 VP. This can also be really good because we have the Chrism, which every time it debuts, it gains block. So even though Unity Tactics only gives allies block, the Chrism will also be giving himself block. And then for our Infernander here, we actually have some supports in our Ferocity cards here that give a familiar block. So our Momentum Shift can give our Infernander block. So making Unity Tactics pretty easy to get that extra 2 VP here. So lots of good stuff to choose from. Actually pretty difficult. So kind of hard to decide, right? So I think for our purposes here, of course we want to go with the Tadalo. I'll go ahead and take a Volt Rock. We'll go ahead and grab a Unity Tactics. Volt Rock I feel like is like really easy to play. It's like, oh, I just need 4 creatures in play and boom, this is good to go. Whereas Unity Tactics, like I only want to play Unity Tactics really preferably if I'm going to get that 2 VP. If I can't get that 2 VP, it feels a little bit less valuable, which means I'm going to need 6 creatures in play that are going to have block. So at least 4 allies, and hoping both my familiars have block, or maybe 5 allies and then just the Chrism having block if I don't have the Momentum Shift. So it can be a little bit more tricky to get Unity Tactics off. So I feel like as a one of, it's not too bad there. Of course, I want to have my Judge's Decree as well. I love this card. Rapture, I think, is a pretty solid one of as well, because it depends on what you're playing against, right? If you're playing against a player that doesn't have a lot of wild creatures, then this debut effect here has a way less value, right? Just so much less value here if there's no wild creatures to KO. So you might not want to go too heavy on that one. And then the Croc can just be a really solid reset tool, right? It's like, oh man, this hand is so bad, I need a reset. I'm just going to slam down a Croc. Wow, that just added every single one of them there. So I know, like, if you've watched my channel for a long time, you know how much I hate one-ofs. But in Wildhearts, I don't mind one-ofs. It's actually not that bad. You think about it, you have a 30-card deck, right? You draw 7 cards at the beginning of the game, which you can immediately mulligan and shuffle them back up and then draw 7 more. That's pretty good, like, chances of seeing, like, the stuff that you need for that particular matchup. So that in itself is really great. And then if you're going first, you know, you get that extra draw. So now you're at 8 cards. And then if you go to the next round, you know, you're going to be drawing 2 more minimum, or 3 potentially. Like at that point, you're already halfway through your deck on turn 2. Like seeing cards isn't that difficult. And then, so we're going to grab some other stuff here, which, jumping back up to Might, I really like Giant Growth because we don't have a whole lot of draw power just yet available, especially if you're running Might and Ferocity. Draw cards is so rare, right? The other styles, special for sure, and then a little bit in tactics here, you know, they've got some decent ways to dig deeper into their deck. But for Might and Ferocity, it's super limited. So Giant Growth here is a 2-cost card, gives us a draw 2. Our opponent has -1 space in their field, so they can only have 3 creatures available in that field at a time. And we give +6 power to the familiar that we choose with the Giant Growth here. So the draw power alone almost kind of sells me on it, but besides that, it's still really great. It's about to give me every one of those cards again. So for 2-cost cards here, for me, I really like this in a Might Ferocity deck where my draw power is super, super limited. Jumping back down here to Ferocity, though, when it comes to our 2-cost cards, we only have one Tamer card available, and that's Momentum Shift, which we talked about earlier. The support gives a familiar block, which is great, but also choose an opposing familiar, give any plus power they have to a friendly familiar in their field, and force that opposing familiar to their bench. Like, this is doing so much. One, you're taking all of that plus power and then giving it to your own familiar. That's in itself really, really amazing, especially because like a lot of these decks, especially if you're playing against Might has all that plus power going on, and then Momentum Shift, you just take it all away, and then you force the opposing familiar to their bench. So not only do you take all the power plus power they have, but then you just send them away off the field back to the bench. So it's removal as well as like crazy good power boosting here. So I like Momentum Shift a whole lot. So we will go ahead and add that to our hand as well. I say to our hand, this just lets me track how many cards I have, right? So instead of counting them one at a time, I can just come down here, look at my my name here in the bottom left-hand corner. It tells me I have 10 cards in hand, which aka I have 10 cards in my deck so far. So how we want to do our split then. So we've got 6 of the 3-cost cards, right? And so that gives us 24 left. So we could do a 12 and 12 split on the 1s and 2s. Not too bad there. I think it kind of comes down to how you want to necessarily go about building your deck, right? One such example here, which can be really important, is a card like Ambush. It says you choose a field, reveal the cards on the top of your deck until you reveal 2 1-cost or lower ally cards. Set them aside and shuffle the rest of the real cards in your deck. Play them in the order they were revealed. When it comes to a card like this, is you need to see different cards. You can't see duplicates. If you reveal like 2 1-cost Ignition, for example, you can only have one of that card in play at a time because of the unique rule. So a card like Ambush might lose a whole lot of value in a deck like that. So I think it's, if you're going to be using a card like Ambush, maybe having like a 14 10 split. So 14 1-cost cards and then 10 2-cost cards. Just so that way you're going to have a good selection of 1-cost allies that you can hit off of a card like Ambush here. So which means we'll probably want to grab every single 1-cost card that we have available to grab, which will be 10 by itself if we double up on all of them, which isn't too bad there. But if you don't want to go the Ambush route, you want to be a little bit more generic, maybe a 12-12 split will work out for you. So we're just going to grab some 2-cost cards here, some really good generic stuff like the Ferocity Tortu debut gain block, and each other friendly creature with block gains +1 power. We already kind of talked about some synergies that we have going on here with something like Unity Tactics giving out block to all of our allies. We've got the Momentum Shift giving block to our other familiar, the Chrism already giving itself block. So we have a lot of block going on in this deck. So something like a Tortu actually has some really good synergy here. And then ongoing, when a friendly creature loses block, Tortu gains +1 power. So then every time we lose power, so not only is he debuting, giving +1 power to all the block creatures, every time those creatures lose block, he's going to gain himself 1 power as well. So he can really ramp himself up in power pretty quick here. So I think for the purposes of the deck kind of theme that we've got going on here, I'm going to go ahead and grab 2 of these. Now there's also a Might version of the Tortu. He's a bit more basic, not quite so flashy. He is a 2-cost as well, a printed 5 instead of a 4, but just debut game block. Super simple card, really straightforward. I've had my Tortus always put in great work here in all the different decks I've ever put them in. So I think the 2 Tortus combo together pretty nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and throw those in there as well. So that's going to give us, so far, we have 8 2-cost cards. So that's going to give us room for 4 more 2-cost cards if we so choose. Now, kind of looking at what we have available here, it isn't too terribly much. The Stillfunk is pretty good when you're thinking about combining this with the Infernander, our Dragon Familiar, because ongoing when you play or discard a skill card from your hand, the Stillfunk gains +1 power and gives an opposing ally in this field -1 power. So if you're running a whole lot of like discard and you're running a lot of skill cards, the Stillfunk and the Infernander together, because he also gives -1 power. If they're skill cards, he gives -2 power instead for when you're discarding cards. Like those two together is really strong. However, we're not running a ton of discard here. We have the Judge's Decree that's going to discard, but that's it really right now. So I don't think I want to choose the Stillfunk here. The Gel Ice is pretty cool because debut, choose an opponent, take a random card from their hand. Like that alone, just being able to take cards from your opponent's hand can be really, really strong, just like diminishing what they're able to do. So that's really just a good generic solid card by itself here. We have the Sparrow, which you can choose an opposing support resource and turn it face down. That can be really strong in like the early game. So like a good turn 1 Sparrow can be really solid because usually your opponent, when they mulligan, they're trying to mulligan into maybe like a really good turn 1 support card, right? Like for example, Tactics here has Lucky Hat, support, draw a card. If they can get a Lucky Hat on turn 1 and put it into support, it's going to be 4 extra cards they're going to be able to draw in a game off of just that, and that's really good value. So something like a Sparrow could be really useful. However, because of the combination we're doing, we're running Might and Ferocity. Our removal is extremely limited on what we have available. Yes, we have the Rapture, which is only for wilds. We have Momentum Shift, but that only works on familiars. So like everything else is just kind of, up in the air. We can't really do much about it. So I like the Airing because debut KO a creature in this field with equal or less power to gain +1 power. So he's a 2/4, removes a body off field here. So I like the Airing. I think it's a pretty solid card for our Might Ferocity deck that we're going for here. So that still leaves us with 2 more 2-cost cards here. And I think just for purposes here, I think I'm just going to grab the Gel Ice here. Just because it's so generic, just like take a card from your opponent's hand, not too bad there. So then that's going to give us a good ratio that we have so far here. We've got 18 cards in deck, so it leaves us 12 more. So now we're looking at 1 cost or less. I like to put the 0s and the 1s kind of in the same ballpark group. Now, if we feel like we've got just too much and we need more space, we could drop the Gel Ice and go for that 14-10 split. So 14, 10, 6. So we're dropping by 4 every single time we're going into that new bracket of our resource curve here. Now, for what we want to choose, it can be really, really difficult on how to go about your 1-cost cards because these are the ones that you're going to be playing probably the most of, right? So turn 1, 2 1-cost cards, pretty common. And then you're going to be playing pretty much a 1-cost card every single turn for the rest of the game. Like almost always, that's kind of how it just goes. So you got to be really, really careful on what you're going to choose here. For Might, I like the Terror Chick here. Guardian, debut, give another friendly creature block. Again, really synergizes with our strategies here that we're going for, like with the Tortu, the Ferocity Tortu there, the Unity Tactics, things like that. And it's friendly creatures, so we can give a familiar this block ability. And it's got the Guardian, so it's going to protect our big powerhouses. So something like, our Chrism and our Infernander, they're just going to have like crazy boosted power. Protecting them is going to be super important for us. So I think going double Terror Chick is a must here. I think it's just a really solid card just in general. Even if you're not doing like a super like tent pole style deck, it can be really solid. I like the Ignition. I think the Ignition is really solid. Again, so debut, give a friendly familiar +1 power. Again, we're just really ramping up in power our familiars. So this just kind of adds to it. So not a bad little 1 cost here. Not too flashy. Doesn't do do a crazy ton of interaction or anything like that. It's just a really solid little 1-cost card. Not too bad here. We also have the Shadoon available ongoing when you play an item card. Give a friendly creature +1 power. Now, if we went super heavy into our items, this could be really good. However, if you're looking at our deck so far, I think the only item we have is the Volt Rock here. So, not going to get a ton of value there. Now, that said, we'll probably want to add the Sylph Amulet here, just because if a friendly ally died or gets KO'd this round, we can just bring them right back and give them block. So this can be really good for like late game when you're like, okay, I'm going to play out my 3-cost guy here, but if he gets KO'd, I'm going to bring him right back with the Sylph Amulet. So this is really great for that. As well as a support, you may move a friendly creature to an adjacent field. Going back to that crag talk that we had earlier, if you're going to choose the crag as one of your 2 fields, then I highly recommend grabbing double Sylph Amulet. Just for the support alone could be super powerful. But even just that bringing a creature right back. So I think Sylph Amulet is always pretty much a good include in your might decks. Just always a pretty solid card for sure. Next, let's jump back down here to Ferocity right quick, though, just so we can have a little bit of an even spread here. Fury Potion will be another item card that we can play. Give an ally +5 power. After scoring, KO that ally, then discard a random card from your hand and draw a card. So this is when you can start to see a little bit more synergy going on with your deck and your Infernander. And also the Sylphunk if you so choose to run it. So being able to discard a card, it is an item card, so we can get the Shadoon proc here. Now, it still doesn't help us in the skill department of getting that extra value there, but how I like to use this is give an ally +5 power, and then it's going to get KO'd after scoring, right? So that's going to clear our field, because often what can happen is you can get really like clogged up. You'll have just too many creatures in play, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't get creatures into these fields with more power because I have this like low power creature there right now. I need to get this guy out of there so I can put in some more powerful creatures in that field. So this is a nice little like turn before that. It's like, okay, I'm gonna like just make this one little guy super big, and then he's gonna get himself KO'd and free up that field. So that's gonna be really nice there, as well as like the support kind of doing a similar thing here. You may KO a friendly ally to give a friendly familiar +2 power. Again, juicing up our familiars really, really strong, as well as getting rid of some of our creatures here. And then we've already kind of looked at a few so far, but like intentionally triggering your KO effects can be really strong. We've put the Gel Ice in our deck, which has a KO. Discard the top card of each opponent's deck. If any were 3 cost or more, gain 1 VP. So this can be like a really good like emergency, hit the emergency red button, KO my Gel Ice on purpose, so that way I can possibly grab another VP and get ahead of my opponent. Okay, so if you're going to have a lot of KO effects, Fury Potion can be super, super strong for that, as well as like combining it with like your Sylph Amulet, right? So I'm going to intentionally blow it up with the support ability, and then I'm going to bring it right back, which, again, if you have something like a debut effect that you want to trigger a second time, that can be a really powerful combination there. So playing it out and then KOing it on purpose, and then boom, Sylph Amulet, bring it right back out again. This time it has block because of the Sylph Amulet effect, and you're going to trigger that debut again. So you can get some really good combinations going on there with the Fury Potion. The Sealant, I like the Sealant. It's a 1/3, so 1 cost, 3 power. Like that already feels pretty good. Debut, move an ally to this field and reveal the top card of your deck. If the reveal card matches the style of that ally, gain 1 VP. Again, another little bit of a VP gaining card, which is always super strong. So that alone can be pretty good, as well as just moving an ally. It doesn't even have to be your own. You could move one of your opponents. Now, if you're playing like a mirror match, then you have a pretty good chance of the styles matching up. However, if they're playing a completely different set of styles, you're probably not going to gain that VP. But still, that board control can be nice because you could be moving like a super high powered ally out of an important field into a non-important field because of the ceiling here, as well as you could be moving one of your own high-powered allies in a field that's not active, and then moving them into an active field with the ceiling, and then potentially also triggering this 1 VP gain. So I think ceiling is just one of those cards that's just kind of like always pretty solid here. So I'm going to throw that into the deck. We've got 4 slots left here. I think we definitely probably want to get maybe another 1-cost card, but I like Sacrificial Bond. So going back to the talk earlier about the Fury Potion, this is kind of similar. So 0-cost KO a friendly ally to draw a card and add this as an exhausted resource. This is a way for us to get a little bit more resources in the late game. So something like an Ignition, once it comes out, debut, give your familiars +1 power. Like, it's not really doing you too much good after that. So boom, Sacrificial Bond, go ahead and KO that Ignition, get it off the field so you can play a second Ignition and get another debut effect. And then Sacrificial Bond will go to your resources. So on all of your subsequent turns, you have an extra resource. So I like Sacrificial Bond, as well as it's going to get you a draw. So again, a little bit more draw because we're in desperate need of it in this combination of styles. So I think Sacrificial Bond is a really solid card for this deck. Now, where do we want to go from here? We could go with a Strength Training, just give a friendly creature +2 power. If they're an ally, they gain Guardian until the end of the round. Support, give a friendly creature +1 power. This can be a really sneaky card. If your opponent thinks they've totally got they're like, okay, I've definitely won this field. They have no more resources. They can't play any more cards. I'm good, right? I don't have to worry about that field. I'm winning it by one power. Cool. Let me focus somewhere else. All right. Now I pass. My opponent goes. Opponent slams down a Strength Training. Boom. They're winning that field by they gain +2 power. They're winning it by 1 now. And you've completely wasted your resources in an area that isn't as important anymore. And you're like, oh no, what have I done? Like, can be a really, really one heck of an uppercut, like out of nowhere kind of card. So I do like that this one as well. You have something like the Latticeer, which if you want to discard a card with the debut, you can give another opposing creature -4 power. That can be a whole lot of -4 power, as well as you're going to be discarding a card. So that can be a really good card to combine with your Infernander and your Sylphunk, like we talked about earlier. However, I haven't really built around that necessarily, like with skills and things like that. So I don't think I want to go that route with the Latticeer. And so then we're kind of down to, do I want to take a Fury Potion, which I've got a lot of KO stuff already. I don't know if I need the Fury Potion also. I might, though. Might get it. We're not running Ambush, so we don't really necessarily need a whole bunch of 1-cost creatures. I don't have a ton of item cards here. I have some, right? But not like a crazy amount. So maybe the Shadoon isn't the way to go either. So I don't really need necessarily any more 1-cost creatures. So maybe a Strength Amulet, nice and simple card, should be the way we could go. Or the Fury Potion, either or, not too bad. I don't think the Fury Potion is quite needed though, because again, we don't have a ton of stuff that we just want to be having get KO'd at the end of the round. A lot of our stuff we kind of want to keep on board, like our Tortus, we don't want to blow them up. We don't want to blow up any of our 3-cost creatures for sure. Our Airing here can get pretty strong, so we might not want to blow him up. The Gel Ice, he's a 4 power. He's not too bad there, so keeping him in play, not too bad of an option. Our Terrachik is providing Guardian, so we probably don't want to blow it up. The Ignition, pretty solid target to intentionally blow up. And then our Sealant, a 1-cost 3 power creature, like that's pretty solid stats. We might not want to be blowing it up either. So I don't think Fury Potion is necessarily how we want to go about this. If we were running an ambush style deck, then absolutely Fury Potion would feel way better in the deck. But since we're not doing that, I think we're just going to stick to just the classic strength training here, just because again, we're just kind of powering up and protecting our tentpole pieces here. So then that is going to be where we finish on the deck here. So again, we've got the 6 3-cost cards, we've got 14 2-cost cards, and then 14 1-cost cards, 1 or less, I should say. Again, 3 cost or higher, 1 cost or less. So we threw the 0 cost ins to fill the space of some of our 1 cost here. And that's just kind of how I approach building my decks here. And then again, kind of looking back into the fields, when choosing your fields, kind of keep in mind how you might want to go about it. So for this deck, it's all about powering up our familiars as much as possible. So something like the Fertilis Canyon, each player has -1 space in this field. I'm only ever going to be relying on basically 1 creature in each field to win that field. So I don't have to worry about, my opponent, death by 1,000 cuts here in a Fertilis Canyon, because they can't get that many in there. Griffin's Crag, another one. I'm just going to be putting my familiar, my Chrism in this field, because he's going to be, crazy powerful just on his own. So I don't really need to worry about, a bunch of little creatures overwhelming me in this field either. Not the Haunted Glade, but one of the starter deck ones here. Highwind Fall, the creature with the highest power in this field has +3 power. So again, your familiars in this deck are going to be super high powered. So, they have a good chance of scoring that field or getting that extra 3 power every single time. So again, just kind of things to keep in mind when building your deck, depending on how you want to go about it. And like a KO style deck, something like the Haunted Glade, before scoring, KO the lowest power creature in this field. Like a really good combination is something like a Siltsune. It's a 1/2, right? Super low debut. Once it does its debut, it's just kind of like, okay, well, I don't have an ongoing or anything like that, so I'm not really providing any more use. But my power is so low that it's almost guaranteed that the Haunted Glade will intentionally KO my Siltsune, triggering its KO effect. Give each opposing ally -1 power in a field of your choice. Like, really good combinations there that you can do. So just kind of keep that in mind. Also, when building your deck, make sure you're kind of building your deck with your familiars in mind. And then when you're picking your fields, make sure you're picking ones that combo really nicely with the deck that you have built. And that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it was a bit of a long one, but I think it was some really good information for a lot of people out there just getting into the game, and then kind of how to approach the deck building process for this game. And again, if you haven't already, make sure you go check out the Wildhearts Kickstarter for Foundations. Again, it closes in just a few days. Late pledges are still available, and go check your pledge, because it might not have gone through, and you might need to go ahead and verify that. I don't want people to lose out on thinking that they're going to have these cards, and then when the time comes, they're like, well, where's my order? Well, you didn't actually go verify it, so your payment didn't go through or something like that. Like, that would really, really suck. So make sure you guys go check that out, and I'll see you in the next video.